It's common for members of a community to argue with their government about its decisions. What's not so common is when both sides accuse one another of ignoring the law. When it comes to marijuana policy, that's the situation Denton finds itself in. It all centers around a local decriminalization ordinance known as Proposition B, which 71% of voters approved in the November election. Among other things, the ordinance forbids the Denton Police Department from arresting or fining people for low-level marijuana possession. According to a February report from City Manager Sarah Hensley, police are still doing both. Hensley and Police Chief Doug Shoemaker have maintained for months that they can't direct officers to fully enforce the ordinance due to state law.
I will do everything I can to look at everything possible that we can, from a corner to go around a corner to make something work, but I will not sit here and tell you that I will violate state law. I will not do it.
Local advocates from the group Decriminalize Denton still aren't buying it.
Your opinion about the legality of Proposition B carries zero weight whatsoever.
The group argues that the city has no choice but to enforce the ordinance because only a court can decide if it contradicts state law. Local attorney Richard Gladden agrees and calls the city's actions an attack on democracy.
What they're doing is totally illegal. And my recommendation to them is if they don't want to follow the law, they need to file a lawsuit.
But the controversy goes much deeper. I talked to Nick Stevens, a board member for Decriminalize Denton, who has been involved at every stage of this struggle. He says the city's narrative on what it can and can't do regarding marijuana enforcement is inconsistent and even dishonest. One example he points to is when former police chief Frank Dixon said he couldn't change police policy so that officers would only arrest for more than 4 ounces of cannabis. After Proposition B was placed on the ballot, however, he made that exact change without explanation. Later on, Stevens tried talking to the current chief, Doug Shoemaker, in a public interview before he was hired.
In that interview process, I asked the now chief if he was hired and Proposition B passed, if he would fully implement it. He shrugged his shoulders and said, if it's the will of the people, of course.
I reached out to Diana Leggett, a former political candidate who was also at that interview. She confirmed that Stevens' description of what the chief said is accurate, yet he is now refusing to enforce Proposition B. But the accusations don't stop there. Stevens says that in a private meeting shortly after the election, he asked the city manager and 2 other officials why Denton could not enforce the ordinance, given that the city of Austin is enforcing a similar one.
They said because the political environment is different here.
Decriminalize Denton has made all of these accusations publicly, and city officials have never spoken out to deny them. I reached out to multiple city spokespeople to try and get some straight answers, but none of them would talk to me. The advocates I spoke to say there aren't many strategies left in the fight for Proposition B aside from pressuring the city council to act. Stevens says he's not surprised by the difficult road ahead, but is determined nonetheless.
I do believe at the end of the day, good always wins out. Pressure from working class individuals is successful, even if it takes time.